Good day everyone, and welcome to Adventures with Parker. Today we are going to go back into Marvel Cave at Silver Dollar City. We already explored the cave pretty extensively in my last vlog, but this time is going to be different, because today we are doing the Lantern Tour. Now you might be thinking, Parker, we already did the cave tour, and that one was free. Why would I now pay $16 to do the same tour all over again? So the Lantern Tour is the very last tour of the day. Unlike the other tours that are free with your park admission, it does cost you $16 and it is something that you have to book in advance. But there are three key things that make it different. One, all of the lights are turned off, so you're exploring the cave in the darkness with only a handheld lantern to guide your way, just as they did 100 years ago when the cave tours first started. Second, this is a longer tour. Unlike the normal ones, which are only 60 minutes, the Lantern Tour is a 90-minute experience and includes a cavern that you don't normally get to see, which contains some interesting history and gives you a chance to spot 3 different species of bats that call the cavern home. And finally, although you'll always hear some interesting stories on the cave tour, during the Lantern Tour, you get to hear some extra spooky tales, including some ghost stories and anecdotes of mysterious things that have happened down in the cave. This is a truly unique experience, so without any further ado, let the Lantern Tour adventures begin.
You can, sun's coming through the top.
Who knew it was dark in caves?
Right, I'm blown.
I got out on Thursday, the cave is fully underground. We're standing inside our biggest room in the cave. We call it the Grand Amphitheater. It's about 410 feet across that wall over there. She's 225 feet wide. It's about 200 feet to the ground below us. The room is so big, we can fit a 20-story building here as wide as a city block. Or if you want to, you can take a Statue of Liberty, put her feet down there, and her torch come out of the hole in the roof right there above our heads. We call it the amphitheater because of the size, but also because of great acoustics. We'll test it out really quickly. The count of 3, I want everybody to shout howdy as loud as you can, facing that wall over there. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Howdy! Awesome job, guys, in the back. Where the bear had fallen in, laying on top of his ledge above y'all, we call that the bear ledge. Good name for it. They looked down and wondered how in the world are they going to get that big bear out of here. Well, that daddy had a young boy up top, wanted to prove how brave he was, bring back the bear himself. What he did, he sent his dog down here first, and the dog got the bear chopping the ledge there in the corner. After had him trapped, the boy came in next with his knife. He's going to try and fight that bear. But the bear had other ideas. He charged after them both and got close to the edge right there, lost your footing, and all 3 of them, the bear, dog, and the boy, fell down to the darkness below. Doggone. The only better from here is to bear with me. I'm barrel Ryan. After that, tries it up top, can't further go on top of that ledge. You look down, they call out his name. Of course, that boy, he never responded to them. Says, look down, heard a lot of strange sounds coming to the cave. And that night, they saw 300,000 dark creatures come flying through the hole in the roof. To them, they're evil spirits. It turns out they're nothing but a bunch of bats. They didn't like it. They thought this cave was a place of great evil. In fact, they named this cave the Devil's Den. That's the first name we had. They also cut sideways V notches on all the trees right here as a warning sign for danger. Don't enter. We believe it will work because we've not found a single Native American artifact in the cave whatsoever. The cave itself went untouched for 300 years in the 1860s. That's when the first person would explore the cave looking for lead and iron ore to make some money off this place. But I'll tell you that story further down the trail. In the meantime, we're going to head on down that way. But before we do, we'll give you a quick heads up. And I mean heads up.
There they go.
Is it a right word? Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Take a look, you see a yellow light way back there. They have to do squeeze on over here.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I'm going to backtrack to the first time somebody explored this cave. That was back in 1869. In that year, there's a man named Henry Taylor Blow. Henry was a lead miner from St. Louis. He heard about this cave in the mountains when he was in before. Came and check it out and see if he can find any lead or iron to turn this place into a profitable lead mining company. Early April, the year came. He came into the Ozarks, found a hole there in the roof. They laid a log across the hole and tied off a big rope to it. One by one, Henry and his fellow miners called down the rope into 200 feet of darkness to the unknown. Get to the bottom of the giant chamber back there, looked around them, couldn't believe their eyes. They were absolutely breathtaking by the vast size of the room they just found. The problem was, though, they could not get close to the walls of the ceiling way above their head, so having troubles finding any lead or iron in that first chamber. Finally, they had to find smaller rooms like this one first, and this was their next stop. Back at that time, though, they had to crawl into this chamber because there was only a 3-foot gap between them, the floor, and the ceiling. Because back then, in this spot, was a huge mound of this black, sticky, smelly stuff. Any guess what that was?
Guano.
You're right. Yep, that's what it was. And they look at the roof above, and they describe the ceiling above you guys as black, moving velvet. They had just found 300,000 bats sleeping in this room at that given time. Yeah, so quietly, they snuck past the bats, kept going further that way, but the guano got so high, it eventually reached the ceiling right about there, meaning they cannot go any further past that point where my light is. So they had to turn around, go back to the big chamber, try to find different pathways to go explore, and they found one more tunnel leading to a room they claimed that was completely made out of marble. We'll talk about that later. Claimed they found marble, didn't find any lead, so they left, told folks up top about the marble, let them have at it. In 1884, some locals, they bought the cave land around it, and they renamed this the Marble Cave, M-A-R-B-L-E. They also start Marble Cave Mining Company, built a small town up top called Marmaros, which is Greek for Marble City. And when he got down here, though, they realized this cave is full of bat guano. It stinks to high heaven. It was miserable to be in this cave back at that time, and to make it more pleasant of a place to work at, they decided to get the guano out of here first, that way they can go for marble mining in a more comfortable conditions. So they began with that first. They started this chamber here, and they took them 2 years to get the guano clear out of this room alone until 1886 they're digging it out of here. They finally had that tunnel cleared, went back to where the ladder is, and that ladder, or that log you see back there was already sitting at the same exact spot back then as it is today. And they were puzzled by that. How is a log this deep in the cave when the only entrance today is the hole up there in the ceiling? Puzzled by this. Took a closer look, they realized a log has been cut by somebody else in the past. It's cut in the shape of a rectangle with notches on the bottom, and it looks like a weird, different type of ladder. They realize they may have an important historical artifact in their hands, better get some help to identify what it is and who it could belong to. So they reached out to Washington, D.C. The guys from Smithsonian came out and checked it out, and they discovered that is a Spanish-style ladder dating back to 1541, when they dated it back to. They believe it belonged to a man named Hernando de Soto. He was a famous explorer, started a trip from Florida in 1539 and made his way to this parts in the 1540s, looking for cities of gold, indigenous tribes, and found the view for his travels, what he's looking for. So it's claimed that he entered this cave, left that ladder back there, and also it's been believed to this day that he left Spanish gold or silver down here too that no one has ever found. If they did, or retired, took it for themselves and retired off of that. That's my plan if I find it. Retired is fun, but haven't found any gold, but we do have found the ladders. We'll talk about the gold a little bit later. Now, when the mining company told its stories to the people around here, no one believed them. They thought they're making it up in order to sell the cave for historical value in later years when they run out of things to mine out of here so they could sell it for history reasons. So no one believed it. Well, about 20 years ago, over Park Admin for Silver City took the trip to Spain and went to one of their hall of records. In that hall, they found a book handwritten by De Soto himself. In 1541, he describes a cave in this area that almost perfectly describes the room that we're inside of right now. He said the ceiling is about 25 feet across. The path makes a right-hand turn, goes about 150 feet that way. And he also said there's a chamber in vast size on the south side of the cave back over that way. That's when we knew, without a shadow of a doubt, he was in this cave in 1541 and left that ladder, and also possibly other treasures as well. Pretty cool to think about. We're eventually going to find are two gigantic underground lakes. They're named Miriam and Genevieve Lakes after the sisters who found them back in 1913. And it takes about 2 hours to get that back there, and 2 hours to get back. It's a 4-hour trip there and back again. They would actually guide you back there themselves how dangerous that tunnel is. The Winchester would gear up, they lead you back there, and they make sure you got out safely because it's just so dangerous. Genevieve, though, when you got to the lake, she put a camel in her mouth, swim across the lakes backwards to the other side, stand up, and let's see how far across she was for you. It was a 150-foot swim for 54-degree water she made until she was 75 years old. Tough old lady. They never got married either. They were too tough to be in these parts, and they never got married to anybody. So they never actually had any kids either. This is their passion project, was the cave. So pretty cool. But they stayed in this chamber until about 1965, until they installed a light bulb there, and eventually they kept going further that way to get away from the light. That came in handy for a tour guide back in 1963. In that year, the zoo up in St. Louis was looking for bats for the Missouri section they were building of animals, and they're kind of hurting for a bat population, though, because St. Louis doesn't have a lot of caves around them with bats in them, so they're hurting for those numbers. Well, they heard about this cave here in Branson. Their new management has a lot of bats in it. Maybe they can get some help from them. So one day up top, the cave guy gets a phone call from the zoo, and they ask him if he would bring 50 bats up there to St. Louis, and they'd pay him $50 per bat. That's a good deal even today by my standards. So he quietly hung up the telephone, snuck away with a cardboard box, punched holes in it, came down here. He found 52 bats right there in the ceiling, snatched them, put them into his box, into his car, and started driving for 4 hours towards St. Louis from here to there. Everything went fine for the first hour of that journey until he got to Springfield. He said he hit a bump. The box flew up in the air, it opened, the bats escaped, and flew around in a circle in the car for the other 3 hours he had left to get to St. Louis. He stopped for gas and raw, and the guy running the pumps up there at the station couldn't believe his eyes. Do you imagine a guy with a stupid grin on his face and a car, all these things floating around his head, trying to figure out what the heck those things are, only to find out they're bats? He had a $5 bill hanging out of his window with a small crack that he had. He won a full tank with no questions asked. Before he did, though, he runs inside, grabs his camera, takes his picture. I have it again for a tour. You have to see it to believe it. We call it the Batmobile. He made it up there, though. He got them all wrangled up back in the box somehow or another. He sold them off for $50 per bat, and he bought a new car afterwards. That thing stunk to high heaven after that happened. Pretty cool. And that guy is actually a park owner, Jack Hirsch, and he's alive today, 91 years old. He owns the place, and he did that. Pretty cool. We're going to talk about him again in the next room. That was wedding he had down here, too. It'd be Mr. William Lynch. His actually name is on a plaque over there on that wall in memory of William Lynch. When he passed away in 1927, he requested that the cave be his burial place for his final resting spot. However, his daughters thought it was a pretty gross idea. They didn't want to do that, so they buried him in a cemetery 2 miles down the street. That's where he's at, I hope. Well, if he was alive, though, he would always be on top of that hill, making sure everyone got in and out of the cave safely that day. He was the first one and the last one out for every tour, every day while he was alive. So it could be him being with us in spirit, since he's not down here physically. Again, I hope. Or just keeping an eye on us, making sure we have safe cave tours to this day, is what it is. I didn't believe that story until 2 years ago. I was on a tour in midsummer on that pedestal. This time I see the person walking back and forth on the top of the tower. No one's ever seen that before. And everyone down here as well, they saw that too. They were kind of puzzled by that. So I believe that story myself. There are sometimes the guides spot it, sometimes you'll spot it before we do. They'll say, hey, you got a person up there. I'm like, yep, forget about it. We're moving on. Speaking of which, we're moving on. Let's get back at it. And if you're a food lover like me, over here we have the Great Cave Turkey. Cool beans, awesome. When you look up where you came from, you can see the heel of my shoe room way up there.
Wow.
125 feet up. This is what we call Gulf of Doom. The reason they named this the Gulf of Dew, they thought it was bottomless in 1869 when they explored it. They threw rocks down here, never heard it at the bottom. Turns out this thing was full of back guano as well. The guano was up to right about there. So instead of thinking that it was a pit filled of mud or a soft landing, they claimed it was bottomless, so Henry T. Blow named this pit the Gulf of Dew. That's why it's called that to this day, is what it is. They realized later in life it was full of guano. They got it cleared out after about 2 years of this getting dug out, and that's when the bats were officially pooped out by that time. That's when the guano was gone. But anyways, like I told you up there, we're talking about the tours, how some people got turned around and lost. Turns out this is where they got turned around and lost at 9 times out of 10. Folks would get to the spot after checking out the waterfall way down there, and their candle would burn out right here, and they're in the dark in a pit, not knowing where to go. So getting tired of that happening, what the Lynch sisters did, they took a 10-foot plank of wood, put 5 candles on the end of it, put it on top of the hill right there, and they would call it the Evening Star. Its purpose was to look up and you knew, hey, that's the way up and out of here, let's go that way. That's what its purpose was. But they put that up there in 35. After the first time somebody went missing in the cave, we have no idea what happened to them to this day. Back in 1934, there was a group of 13 Girl Scouts who took a cave tour here from Springfield. They'd been here plenty of times previously, but this trip they want to take an 8-hour tour by themselves with no guides present whatsoever. What a great idea.
That's smart.
Yeah, I know, right?
Girl Scouts,
Thinking skills back then. So anyways, the day comes along, they come here and they ask them if they could do that. And the Lynchers say yes, they've seen them before. They knew the cave semi-well. They said, you have 8 hours, be back at 6:30, otherwise we'll come looking for you. Given their coveralls, the pickaxes and candles, and they had at it. Well, 6:30 rolls around and no one has made their way back to the big chamber. They don't have a watch back then, how do you know what time it is? So let's give them a little bit extra time. Another hour rolls on by and no one has still made their way back to the big chamber, so I probably ought to go looking for them at this point. So the sisters gear up in their big coveralls, get their search lanterns oiled up, go looking high and low for those Girl Scouts all throughout the cave. They searched the big chamber first, nobody, sheer room, not a soul. And they thought, let's come down here next, where they get lost at the most is in this pit, maybe they're down here. And through this room, didn't find anybody. So next, they go behind me down to the waterfall that I can hear way down there. In the waterfall, they found 2 Girl Scouts shaking and scared to death in the pitch black because their candles got out. They're standing in 54-degree water, getting dripped on. They're pretty cold. There's no one else with them. I tried asking them, where are the other 11 at? Where can we find them? And they were so cold, their teeth were chattering. Couldn't get an answer out of them. So they took those 2 out of the cave, took them up to their cabin, let them stay the night. While they slept, they came back and searched the entire night, but didn't find anybody, so they gave up in the morning for a short time. I went up top and asked them again, what happened on your tour last night? We need to find these girls. They're probably cold and hungry by this point. We get them out of the cave. They said when they got to the waterfall, the candles went out at the same time for everybody. Only 2 stayed put, and the other 11 walked on by trying to find a way out of this cave. Whether they did or not, we have no idea to this day. We have not found a pair of overalls, pickaxe, or a candle down here whatsoever indicating if they got out or not. That's our biggest mystery. So after that happened, they put that plank of wood up there as a signal to tell people this is the way out of the cave. But nowadays, have an electronic one as a homage to them. They're hoping using that they'll get out of our cave once and for all and leave us alone and get the heck out of here. Because after that happened, that's when strange things started happening down in the cave, including the man in white on top of the tower. Next up, the cave, or last up, we call this the Old's Chamber. This is the last place explored by the mining company in 1889 when they sold the cave off the Lynch sisters, but this is what they discovered last. When they climbed up here, though, they had to climb the walls, and they were huffing and puffing like we are, but back at that time, the air quality in the cave, it sucked. Back then, the door there did not exist. There was a lot of carbon dioxide built up in the chambers that cannot get the airflow that they have today. So they're standing here, huffing and puffing, breathing in CO2. Good for you. And they said as they described the shadows from the candles, the formation looked like dancing elves and fairies. Of course, we know they're tripping, seeing things. But we think there wasn't any elves, that what happened to them, when they blasted up tunnel using dynamite, they got scared, ran away to the trees, started baking cookies for people ever since. That's traps, which is pretty cool. Myself, if not more, and so is everything above your guys' heads as well. On that note, let's get the heck out of here.
Alright, so the end of the lantern tour works pretty much the same way as the regular one does. You board the cable train and are hoisted back up to the surface. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this. And at the end of the day, I would say that it is worth it, especially if you've done the cave tour before and you know you're a fan of it. Yeah, I would totally pay for this again. And although I maybe wouldn't recommend doing both versions of the tour on the same trip again, I still thought it was pretty interesting, and, you know, both experiences were different enough that it didn't feel like we were rehashing the same thing all over again. But what about you? Do you prefer the Lantern Tour, or would you rather just stick to the original? Comment down below and let me know. And with spooky season coming up, if you know of any other theme park related ghost stories, comment those down below as well. Anyways, if you enjoyed this adventure, also be sure to go back and see my main Silver Dollar City vlog to see what the rest of the park has to offer, and of course I have another video highlighting the normal version of the cave tour as well. If you want to see more adventures from theme parks, attractions, and beyond, be sure to become a subscriber. Also be sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos. If you want to see even more from me, find me on social media. I'm at ADP Parker on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, and at Adventures with Parker on TikTok and Facebook. As always, big shout out to my Patreon members for going above and beyond in your support of the channel. I appreciate you guys so much. And if you're interested in supporting me with a monthly donation in exchange for some sweet perks and bonus content, head on over to patreon.com/adbparker to learn more. Once again, thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, the adventures are calling. Bye!
Ooh, there they go.